Good morning and welcome to today's Recovery Summit presented by St. Clair County Community Mental Health with support from the St. Clair County Health Department. Today's presentation is on substance abuse recovery. Before we begin, we would like to go over some general reminders. Please use the chat feature for all questions or comments. Our presenter will be answering questions as time allows. Today's presentation offers one social work CE, one McBath credit, and one peer credit. If you are requesting professional credits, you must remain on the webinar the entire time for credit. If you lose connection, please reconnect as soon as you're able. A survey will pop up following the conclusion of the webinar. Those of you that are requesting social work CEs, a completion of the survey is necessary. And now I would like to introduce today's presenter, Elijah Bennett. He is a peer recovery coach at BW Rock. Welcome, Elijah.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. Hope everyone's having a good morning. As you heard, my name is Elijah Bennett. I am a grateful recovering addict and a peer recovery coach at BW Rock, the Blue Water Recovery Outreach Center. And today I'm going to give you some information I have on substance abuse recovery. So what I want to touch on today is a little bit of my own story, my journey in it. Where I am today, where it got me, how others can find recovery and the services offered here in St. Clair County. And then I want to talk a little bit about prevention and what that looks like and how we all can be a part of it. So with that being said, I'll start you off with a little bit of my background. So my first exposure to substance abuse, to drugs, was actually through my mother. It wasn't through me experimenting myself. And so at the age of 12, I was exposed to her doing drugs along with a few other things. And, like a lot of addicts, it left some trauma on me. And that trauma is something I carried with me for a very long time until I got into recovery. It affected my life in many different ways, and it was one of the catalysts that started my substance abuse. So, growing up from 12 years old on, I was exposed to a lot of stuff that I became very aware of and was able to recognize in my life. Unfortunately, I didn't have the tools or the peers to help me during those times. And so most of my adolescent life, I was at odds with my teachers, with other children my age. Through my teenage years, I was very defiant, got into trouble, would get into fights with my parents, and I wasn't a good role model to my family. And I came from a family in which I was the oldest of 10 kids. So I was looked to be the responsible one, to be the mature one, and to lead my brothers and sisters. However, that wasn't the case. The only thing I was able to teach them is what not to do. And growing up, through adolescence, it was hard, and I could see that life was going to be difficult as an adult, yet I still didn't know how to change it. So I went into my adult years, dropped out of high school, and started finding myself in tough situations. My path of recovery is Narcotics Anonymous, and they say the only things that we experience in addiction is jails, institutions, and death. And those are our only ends to a mean, or our only ends. And that started to become a reality in my life. As a young adult, at 24 years old, I looked back at my life as I was sitting in a jail cell, and I realized that I had been in jail more times than I had been than years I had been an adult. I'd been to jail 7 times in my 6 years of being an adult. I had been hospitalized twice. My friends were passing away all around me, and reality was starting to hit me. And this was still at a time where I didn't know the resources. I didn't know what help was available to me. And I was still trying to do everything on my own. And that was one of the biggest problems, is thinking that I could fix it and that I could go through it alone, that I could figure it out. Because it has absolutely not been the case in my recovery journey. I was never able to white knuckle it. I was never able to outsmart the system or find a successful way to use drugs, because there was none. So while I was sitting there in St. Clair County Jail, pondering all this stuff and looking at my life up to this point, I was presented with a dilemma, and it was, am I going to continue down this path until one of these things, until I'm either in prison for life or dead, or do I actually want to be somebody in this life? And it seemed like a no-brainer. So I made the decision that I wanted to change my life, which was huge. I now had the willingness. But in order to move forward, I needed some guidance. And first I sought out my own higher power. And then I found the tables of Narcotics Anonymous. So one of the great resources that we had here in St. Clair County was the Narcotics Anonymous H&I committee. That's hospitals and institutions. Something I would later get involved with in my recovery journey. And they came into the jails once a week, along with Alcoholics Anonymous, and they would hold a meeting for the inmates there. And that was my first experience with recovery. And I remember sitting down, and one of those prevalent things that stuck with me for the first time was the jails, institutions, and death. When I heard that mentioned in their basic text, I knew I was sitting in the right place. And the more I went to those meetings and the more I read that book, the more I related to it and the more I started to understand myself, which was something that I was missing for a very long time. New ideas started getting grafted onto me. Ones that told me I cannot go through this alone. I cannot rely on my own will and my own thinking, that my disease is not drugs. My disease is actually here and here. I've come to understand that my disease affects me in 3 different ways. There is a mental, a physical, and a spiritual part of my disease. The mental part is the obsession. I will obsess about something, and it will consume every thought, and it will go into my actions, which is the physical part of my disease. The compulsiveness to use. So mental is obsession, physical is compulsion, and the spiritual part is my total self-centeredness. The inability to think about anything outside of myself when I'm in that state, when I'm acting within my addiction. So in order to overcome that, I had to implement recovery into my life. And this is the way that I did that has changed over the years. Started off with Narcotics Anonymous and a basic idea of what my higher power was. And I allowed that to be my guidance for a long time. I used the 12-step method, one that I found to be extremely effective. But with that being said, it didn't solve all my problems. As I stated in the beginning of the presentation, there were some deep-rooted traumas in my life that had to be addressed. And it came from other professionals who are in the recovery field that were able to help me work through those. But Narcotics Anonymous did give me all the awareness that I needed to have in order to move forward in my recovery journey. So it started there. It started with that, working the 12 steps, exiting that jail cell and implementing everything that I learned, doing things like 90 meetings in 90 days, which for me was more like 180 meetings in 90 days. Finding myself a sponsor, a home group, a service position, getting to know the community, getting tight with these groups of recovering addicts and finding out what worked for them and implementing it into my life. I was finally accepting that guidance. I was finally trying something outside of what I thought was the answer and what I thought was best. And it was working. So I kept running with it. And that's something that I still do today. I still attend Narcotics Anonymous. I'm still with the same home group that I was when I got out, 4 years ago. And I still implement that into my life. But that being said, throughout my recovery journey, I've seen a need for many other things. Like I said, Narcotics Anonymous gave me the awareness of a lot of stuff, awareness of my defects of characters, and it also gave me spiritual principles to combat those defects of characters, which are hard to practice sometimes. Even though I worked my 12 steps, it certainly wasn't a cure-all. The 12 steps just gave me a way to manage my life today. And it was only through Narcotics Anonymous that I found that, only through the 12 steps that I found that. But with that being said, if I don't continue to practice this, if this isn't daily maintenance, if I don't continue to do my steps 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis, then I have no doubt that I would resort back to an unmanageable life. So I have learned that recovery is not just a destination, it is a journey. I'm not looking at any endpoint. I'm just looking to continue moving forward in it. And today, a little bit more of what I do is Codependence Anonymous, addressing my codependency issues, my people pleasing, my placing my sense of self-worth in what others think of me, my employers, my peers, the community. I absolutely respect and love my community, but at the same time, my sense of self-worth needs to come from self. And so I practice Codependence Anonymous to better understand that and not put my sense of self-worth in somebody else's hands. There's been many different support groups that I've tried throughout the years. Not all of them work for me, but some of them do. And somewhere along the road through working through my recovery and making myself available, helping out in events, and just showing my face around here and showing up when the help was needed, I was presented with an opportunity, and that opportunity was to become a peer recovery coach. And that's where recovery led me to today. It's quite a funny story. It was on my heart that I didn't want to keep going down the career that I had before I became a peer recovery coach. So in my mind and in my heart, I believed that what I wanted to do for the rest of my life was to help others, to give back what was freely given to me. I wanted to help people who had been in my shoes because I had experience with it, and it came naturally to talk about it, to share it, and to help people along the way. Truthfully, there's no better feeling than that. I took a pay cut just to get here. But with that being said, I didn't have the credentials when it was on my heart and mind to do this. So I started looking for a CCAR class, and I had planned for one last February, and the class ended up not happening. And I just accepted it as, I trust my higher power. It's just not the right time. Maybe I need to do a little more time in the career that I'm at right now before switching careers. I was taking it as a sign and accepting it for what it was. And out of the blue, without ever putting it out in the air or speaking to this person about it, somebody who is a peer recovery coach came up to me and approached me and said, you should apply. You should apply to be a peer recovery coach at BW Rock. And I thought it was incredible how it just worked out that way. It felt like divine intervention, because I didn't have the credentials yet. And even though it had been on my mind and on my heart, I never told anybody that that's what I was pursuing. And yet it felt like my higher power just put that person into my life to let me know it was time. So I put in that application, and I was hired based off of potential. They saw something in me, and since that day, it meant a lot to me because I knew there was other people more qualified. But for me, this is my passion. This is where my heart is, and it's something that I want to do for the rest of my life, is to help other people who have struggled like me, to help people through recovery, to show them the way, to guide them to the best of my ability. It's what I want to do with my life. And I think they believed in me. And since then, I've been doing my best to fulfill that, and I'm going to continue to do my best for the rest of my life. And that means maintaining my recovery and helping other people find it. So yeah, that's a little bit of my story. I also gave you where I am today. Now I kind of want to talk about what we have to offer, how others can find recovery here in St. Clair County. And maybe these ideas can be implemented wherever you are if you are outside of St. Clair County. So here in St. Clair County, I work at an organization called BW Rock, or the Blue Water Recovery Outreach Center. And we offer a few different things there, a few different ways to support the individual seeking recovery, our participants. One of the ways we do it is through our support groups. We have a support group every single day of the week. The support groups that we offer there, they are all pathway groups. So what works for one person might not work for another person. We understand that. We try to implement that where we work, and allow people their choice in a recovery pathway. Obviously we're on one organization, so we can't cover every single pathway, but we offer a large variety. And it's a great thing to see because it's the only place in the city that does that. At our facility, you can find Recovery Dharma. It's a Buddhist approach to recovery with meditation. You can find Recovery Yoga, implements recovery ideas in with yoga. And, physical health is a part of our recovery. And it also helps with mental health, which is part of our recovery. I'll touch into that a little bit more in a bit. We do AA groups, NA groups, step working groups. We have life recovery Bible studies for those who have that faith. And we just offer a whole bunch of different pathways at BW Rock, trying to cater to anybody who walks through our doors and help them find what works for them. And I think that puts a little bit of power back into the individual. Instead of just telling them, this is the way, you got to follow this way, we open the door and say, here's a few different varieties of ways. What do you think fits best for you? And then we try to encourage them to walk that path. Another part of the way that we support our participants at BW Rock is through one-on-one peer recovery coaching. And this is the work I get to do. This is the meat and potatoes. This is what I love about what I do. We hop into something called a recovery wellness plan. Now, this covers 8 different aspects of an individual's life. It starts with recovery communities, which is their personal recovery, getting involved with the community around them, the recovery community. Um, we focus on physical health, emotional health, um, spiritual health, living accommodations, jobs and educations, daily managements, which can be anything from court cases, outstanding warrants, credit score, budgeting, and lastly, the services and volunteering, the giving back, the getting involved. So we address all 8 areas of those lives. We brush up on them. We find out, we do a needs assessment and find out where people are at today, if they need help in those areas. And if they do, we set goals and steps to reach that goal. So this is where we really get to see people blossom. This is where I get to live vicariously through the individuals who come through our organization's doors, because I get to share their success with them, encourage them, help them stay accountable and watch them grow. And that's the beautiful part of the job. That's the part that I love about it. And I'm grateful I get to do it every day. And I'm grateful I get to watch people grow. And then one of the last ways that we support people is through our community events. We put on community events here at BW Rock to show face at other organizations, and show that we're partners here in Port Huron and in St. Clair County. We get ourselves involved with other communities events. We put on our own events, and when we do this, we try to eliminate the stigma of being in addiction or being in alcoholism, the stigma of being in recovery, because truthfully, everyone deserves a chance, and a lot of us have just been struggling. We're not bad people. We've just been struggling to find a way that works for us. And I think when we put on these community events, I think when we allow these doors to open where we're getting involved with the community and they get to see that people in recovery are putting this on, that they're helping out at these events, that they're giving their time, that they're smiling and having fun, that stigma gets lifted just a little bit more. And I think that's huge, not only for the individual, but for the community as well, because it takes a bad taste out of the community's mouth, and it helps the person in recovery to feel a little bit more welcomed, a little bit more part of. And if anybody out there knows, one of the major combatants to addiction is connection. So we allow that connection to happen through the community events that we put on. And that's a beautiful thing. I'm grateful for the connections that I get to make in the community today. I'm in the same boat. I introduced myself as a grateful recovering addict because I still am a grateful recovering addict. And yet I get to work with people like the DHHS, the health department, and many other organizations. And that warms my heart that I'm accepted into those places. And, it's not just people within my recovery bubble that believe in supporting me, but it's the community that believes and supports in me. And I'm extremely grateful for that. And I think everybody deserves that chance, as long as they're putting forth effort in their recovery. Now I wanted to talk lastly about prevention. It's been a big topic. And as I shared my story, I mentioned quite a few times that I just didn't have the resources a lot of times in my life. I didn't have the awareness. I didn't know things like Narcotics Anonymous existed. I didn't know support groups existed. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't have peers in my life. We didn't have people talking in my schools. We didn't have stuff like that growing up. And so I flew under the radar, and I didn't know any of that help was out there. Thank God I found it. But I think that a part of prevention is making that awareness in the community, kind of like what I was talking about previously. Just making it more open, accepted, and available, having more awareness in the community about these issues that occur, because they do. And it's not something to keep in the dark. It's not something to hide. It's something that we can shed a light on. And in doing so, you never know who might see it, might need it, and who we might help. So I think partnership is a huge thing. I think, people in recovery partnering with these organizations that have that can branch out to large amounts of people is huge, because it will help spread that awareness, in turn reaching more people, in turn lifting that stigma a little bit more, and making resources available to those that need it. With all that being said, I just wanted to wrap up my little prevention part by saying that this little quote I found before the presentation, it is from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. It's directly from their website. And the quote says, "Results from NIDA-funded research has shown that prevention programs involving families, schools, communities, and the media are effective for preventing or reducing drug use and addiction." So I think that speaks volumes. I think we need to get into the schools and talk to kids. I think we need to have programs available for families of supporting members. And I think the communities in this nation, not just in St. Clair County, because St. Clair County does a great job, but the communities in the nations need to embrace the idea of addiction recovery and substance abuse recovery, and have awareness of it, because that's how we solve the problem. We nip it in the bud as soon as we can. And how do we do that? We make it available to those who are struggling with it early on. I'm grateful I found recovery young. Some are not so fortunate, and I hope one day we can reach more people than we have today. As you heard, the research shows that it is possible. All we need to do is keep spreading that awareness, keep partnering with people, and keep spreading the message. With that, that's it for my presentation. I am open to questions, and I am grateful you guys listen to me. So if anybody has any questions, I am open to answering. Thank you.
All right. We do have a question. What is your response when people who are just starting in recovery dismiss the idea of any step programs such as AA and AA Smart Recovery?
I point them to one of the other options. As I stated before, there's multiple pathways to recovery. Not all of them are 12-step programs. And I think a lot of people don't know that, but there are alternative approaches to AA, NA, any 12-step, even the Smart Recovery. There's a lot of different alternatives that they can find. One being the Recovery Dharma. It's not a 12-step program. There's quite a few other examples there, but I would try to push them into another pathway, and also try to talk to them about what they think would work for them. Helping them find awareness that there is a problem will also help them have awareness that we do need to find an answer.
All right. Does BW Rock utilize family recovery coaches or PRCs only?
PRCs only at this point. Through my outreaches, I run into a lot of people who have not experienced substance abuse personally, but they have family members or children who have, and it's brought to my attention that we need to implement that a little bit more. So it's been in discussion within our organization to offer more family support. And I think we'll be partnering with one of the organizations that we're working with to make that happen. So hopefully in the future, we will have more of that.
All right. And someone's asking, what are some barriers you experienced when seeking recovery?
Some of the barriers that I experienced seeking recovery would be the occasional moments to take my control back, to take my will back. See, we have something called life on life's terms in Narcotics Anonymous, and it's basically Newton's law. If something bad can happen, it will happen, you know. And I've had some instances where bad things have happened in my life, or I've been in financial struggle, and I've wanted to cut corners to get there. You know, I've wanted to cut corners to get what I wanted. And in those moments, I've had to reach out to my sponsors, to my peers, take a step back, relinquish control, and just continue to put in the footwork and leave my results to the higher power. But that was certainly a barrier of mine, is accepting life on life's terms, and also not taking my will back, not taking control back. I had to continue to trust the process, and in the end, it all worked out every single time that I did.
And what kind of things do you say to people with multiple relapses?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a good question. You know, what I try to do when I run into people with multiple relapses, because it certainly is a thing, is I stay patient with them, and I continue to make myself available. I'm not sure there's any easy answer to that question, but I do know that for certain, I'm not going to enable them when they're in their addiction. However, if they are seeking recovery, then I will make myself available. Then I will go out of my way to get them the help that they need, get them into the rehab, get them into the detox. And only the individual can determine when they've had enough pain, when they've had enough of their addiction. Some people just aren't ready yet. Some people come through only for a brief pause from their addiction, you know, and that's okay too, because even for those people, a seed is planted, and when it gets bad, they know where to turn to. And even if we can even go give them that momentary relief, that still means something to them, and it still means something to me. You know, I'm grateful that I get to help them, even if they do continue to relapse. I'm grateful that we are there and the doors are open, even if they are struggling, to allow the ideas into their life. So that's the way that I try to approach someone who is struggling with finding recovery, is just make myself available when they want it.
So what are some barriers you experienced when seeking recovery?
The barriers that I experienced was, as I said before, trying to take control back and trying to take my will back. You know, trying to when things got hard, when life on life's terms happened, I was presented with a few circumstances where I was able to cut corners. I could have cut corners, and I chose not to. I chose to trust recovery. I chose to trust the program that I was working. have patience, have faith, and everything worked out. So the barriers that I had was accepting life on life's terms, and also taking my will back. That was one of the barriers that I had.
What are your recommendations for helping the vaping and marijuana addictions that are present in schools?
Again, the prevention aspect of it, getting some people who have experience, such as peer recovery coaches, people with the RCOs, getting them into the schools, speaking to the children about it, doing a little bit of preventative care, planting those seeds to, even if it doesn't hit them directly and change them that day, at least letting them know what the effects can be, putting that awareness out there. That way, even if they are doing it in the back of their mind, they know the effects of it, and when they're ready to turn it around, they know where to turn to. Yeah, I guess that's all I got on that.
So just a follow-up with that, do you think vaping is a gateway? And if kids may not think so, how would you talk to them about that?
Well, like I stated before, when we talk about gateway, a lot of things can be a gateway. For me, addiction is not exclusive to drugs. It is a mental and spiritual part of me. It is obsession, compulsion, that type of thing. And so I think potentially it could be a gateway, because you can get addicted to anything. But that being said, I think providing them with information on the health risks of it, letting them know that this could negatively, and probably is going to negatively, affect you in your future. Just giving them the information that they need to make a logical decision is huge. And I guess I would try to convey that, and let them know that, like, if they don't address that, then will they be able to address other issues as they arise, or will they be able to say no when other things come into their life, or when they're presented with other opportunities. So yeah, that's how I would try to approach that.
All right. And what would be your advice to someone who recognizes they have a substance abuse issue but lacks motivation to attend treatment?
Again, I would if they have awareness that they have a problem and they're not willing to get it, just have to ask them, do you feel that you've had enough? If they have to answer, and honestly answer that question. We can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped, and that's an unfortunate thing. I'd love to help everybody, but the reality is anybody seeking recovery has to want it for themselves. So we have to ask our participants, the individuals, those questions. Are you sick and tired of it? Okay, good. Are you willing to do something about it? And they have to be willing to answer yes to that question in order to receive help. If not, they're just not going to get it. And that's unfortunate, but it's true. We can't force recovery on anybody. We can only be advocates and show them the way.
What areas do you feel our county needs to improve on as far as education and recovery goes?
I think the main one is providing support for the families, as I stated before, the families affected by substance abuse. I think that is a huge area that we could improve on. As I said before, we have some things in the works. We're looking into that. With that being said, that's really only one of the lacking points. This county, St. Clair County, is excellent for recovery, and we hear it every single time that somebody from out of town comes here seeking recovery. You know, they say, I didn't know something like this existed. I didn't know the community was so accepting of it. So I do want to give a shout out to St. Clair County for being very welcoming to those seeking recovery, very accepting. You know, the job opportunities are there, the community engagements are there, and it almost feel like that stigma is being lifted around here. You know, it's not something that necessarily gets held against you. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to St. Clair County. But other than that, I would say recovery, offering support groups for families who are affected by substance abuse would be an area that we could improve on.
Do you find any challenges or advantages to being a person in recovery and also working in the recovery field?
Yes, the vulnerability aspect of it. So, you know, everything I do is within the bounds of St. Clair County. My personal recovery happens within St. Clair County. But also I have participants that I have to set ethical boundaries with. So there's a level of vulnerability that I have to be aware of. There's an area where I have to draw a line, and I have to become a peer recovery coach and not be a friend or a sponsor, let's say. You know, I have to, when I'm in the workplace and I see participants come through the door, I have to treat them as participants and not treat them as I would treat a fellow addict in that I would see in a recovery meeting. So yeah, I have to set ethical boundaries between my personal life and my work life, my personal recovery and working with somebody else's recovery. Focus has to be more on them and less about me sharing my vulnerability experience.
What age do you feel substance use and recovery should be discussed in our schools? And what options do minors have to get help?
I think at the minimum, I would say high school. You know, I was affected at 12, but I think even if I would have heard somebody coming into my school sharing their message of hope, their message of recovery, I think maybe it could have been a catalyst for me back then. I know our organization does that, and I think that's a great thing. You know, just letting these kids know that, like, yes, people go through this, you know, and it might lead you down a dark road if you don't address it, if you don't talk about it, if you don't get out there and seek support from people who've been through it, because that therapeutic value of one act's helping another, like they say, it's without parallel. You know, I was missing that my whole life. My parents tried to get me therapy. I wasn't ready for it. It works in my life today. It didn't work in my life back then. You know, I needed that lived experience. I needed somebody who went through it. So I think getting out in those schools right at freshman year, I would say, and just reaching out to the entire school and sharing a little bit of what it's like, you know, these experiences that we live. That awareness might have kids reach out sooner rather than later. Well, I missed the second part of the question, but I hope that answered the first part at least.
The second part was, what options do minors have to get help?
Oh, there's actually quite a few here in St. Clair County. We're starting up a NARTine group soon. We had one in the past, ran into some hurdles. We'll be setting that up again soon. There's also living situations and support groups for teens outside of the city, resources for them to get clothes, resources for them to get food, education, housing, all types of stuff. The community actually they fly under the radar, but there's actually a lot of opportunities. And if an individual, a teenager, was ever looking to get those resources, they could come to BW Rock and be pointed into in the right direction.
And what if they don't live in the county?
Then we could, I would say, we have never turned somebody away. We reach out to other counties and we help with anybody who calls asking for help. So we could get them connected with resources in their counties. But as far as other counties, I'm not entirely, I don't know the resources that they would have available for their teenage youth, but it seems that there's a lot of support for teenagers in this county, and I would imagine that would extend on to others. I think people would be more willing to help, teenagers going through crisis situations than even adults, I would presume.
Well, that's good that they're not turned away and you're willing to help them find help. I know there's a lot of questions. We appreciate you taking all these questions.
No problem.
What are good ways for a loved one to open a conversation? Like what kind of like exact wording would you use to open the conversation that could be helpful for people?
Exact wording is tricky because it's all situational. I know one thing I wouldn't do is I wouldn't attack the individual. I would express concern. I would express how it makes me feel if one of my loved ones is experiencing some mental health or some substance abuse issues. I would use I statements. I would try to convey how I feel, my concerns, and maybe ask them what they think about that, and how they feel, get their perspective on it and where they're at. Again, it's one of those situations where the best we can do is offer support, and it's on the individual to decide if they need to do something about it. So yeah, I would try to convey feelings, use I statements, and avoid attacking the person and sending them into a defensive mode.
Is there anything you wish you would have known in your childhood that may have prevented you from using the first time?
Again, I think having some peers in my life would have helped. I was definitely surrounded by a lot of negativity in my younger years, so I didn't have a lot of good support peers. Again, I think somebody coming and speaking publicly to one of the schools I was at probably could have helped me. I honestly didn't know any of it would ever become an issue, until it did. So yeah, I think just having more peers in my life would have helped me.
And how important is it for an individual that's in recovery to stay connected and have support from family, friends, their community?
I think it is vitally important. I think that recovery doesn't continue if you don't. Um, there's a quote from a old timer. He had a lot of years clean, and he lost it, and nobody could believe it. He came back and he says, they said, "What happened? How did you lose all those years?" And he said, um, I started counting the years and I stopped counting the days. And I think that speaks volumes. It's a lot more than just time. Um, Recovery is continued maintenance, especially for me personally. Um, I have to continue staying connected. I have to continue staying with my support group, continue working my steps, continue talking to my sponsor. Um, Again, recovery is not a destination. Uh, it is a journey, and one that I will continue to progress. I think all of us can agree that nobody is perfect. I'm never going to be perfect, but I can continue to strive for progress. That's another saying we have. It's progress, not perfection. Um, the day I start to stand still, the day I stop implementing this stuff, the farther I separate myself from what has been working. And I don't want to do that. I don't even want to test the waters. This life has been so good to me. I get to be a father today to my two kids, one of which I wasn't there for the first 4 years. And now I have joint custody. And I never give up this life that I have today. So much better to be here with ease and with comfort and without that fear, paranoia, anxiety. And yeah, in order to have that, I have to continue maintaining what got me here. So I just try to never forget.
That's very helpful, and thank you for sharing all that. I know you mentioned that this is a journey, and for supports and stuff, that people can get burned out. What do you say to people's supports? Like, how do you help them from feeling guilty and all that?
Yeah, I love this question. I've definitely experienced this question. Um, you know, at a peers conference, actually, this question was presented at the MI peers conference. Um, we were in a workshop about self-care, and it was we were talking about what happens when you get burnout, because all of us face it. um, I love this recovery journey just as much as the next person. I'm super passionate about it. I'll never give it up. But sometimes that repetition, that monotony, that showing up and showing out, it gets old. And what was suggested in our self-care workshop, and what I found works in my life, is to try something new, implement something new into your recovery journey. Maybe instead of going to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting on this day, maybe I'll try recovery yoga, or maybe I'll try recovery Dharma, or maybe I'll try the Life Recovery Bible study. Maybe I'll open my mind to new ideas. Maybe I'll chase another certification or take on a new responsibility and try to start my own meeting. All of these things are possible, and I've tried all those things in my life. And what I've found is that when I push myself outside of my comfort zone and try to do something new, I get that spark back. I get that excitement back, especially when I start to grasp new concepts. It feels like I'm learning more, and it lights a fire inside of me again. And I get excited about recovery again. And I want to share it with people, and I go out and I do, and that energy carries over into other aspects of my life. So the suggestion is try something new. And then you can always go back to what worked before and implement that again when you get bored with the new thing. So keep spicing it up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And we talked a lot about, recovery and stuff, but for physical health is also important when you're going through recovery. Could you give us tips for, on how to take care of yourself physically during this recovery, journey?
Yeah. Recovery yoga is great for that. Just saying. But yeah, physically, when I address the physical health of in individuals, recovery wellness plan, um, we address areas like with the basic ones. How do you eat? How are you sleeping? Do you exercise regularly? Do you have health insurance? When's the last time you seen a doctor? When's the last time you seen a dentist? These are all vital questions of physical health. It's not just about exercise. It's about the whole body and where you're at with it. How are you taking care of it? And so I try to encourage a little bit of all of that, without pushing too hard, but trying to encourage small things. And if somebody's not ready to hit the gym every single day, because we're going to run into a lot of people who aren't, maybe we can suggest that they just try one small thing a week and then build onto that and add on to that a little bit more. Maybe we encourage them to eat one healthy meal a week. And then when they do that for a month, we encourage them to eat 2, and then 3. And then all of a sudden it becomes a habit before they even know it, and they feel good about it and they start to feel the results. So it comes with small motivation, small encouragement, just getting them to try it and explaining that taking care of this body will help you feel better in other areas too. Taking care of the physical helps the mental, so that's where I'm at with that. That's how I try to approach it with my participants.
And we know that going to the doctor is very important. How do you talk to your doctor or talk to people that are scared to talk to their doctors about being in recovery without feeling like they're being judged?
I don't necessarily think that it's a requirement, actually. That every individual has the right to anonymity. And so if they don't want to disclose that they're in recovery, they don't have to. For me personally, it helped out a lot, especially when I started getting the dental work done. I felt the need to explain myself. But surprisingly, I was welcomed with open arms. So I would share my lived experience with them. When I went to the dentist, I felt the need to explain why my teeth were so bad, and in doing so, they were very understanding, very accepting, and showed extra care, and were actually commending me on my vulnerability and accepting me for who I was today. And I got to become closer and shared more experience with them because of that. So it could have been a secretive relationship, but instead it blossomed into a beautiful one where someone who's not even within the realm of recovery found out a little bit about recovery, and we're very accepting of it. We got to see it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That was all of our questions. We really appreciate your time today and all the information you gave and questions you answered. Just as a quick reminder, the Recovery Summit is going on all month with different topics and speakers planned each weekday. Tomorrow's presentation will be at 9 a.m. presented by Elise Nichols and Cassidy Livingston from St. Clair County Health Department on e-cigarettes, vapes, and what you need to know. To see information and register for additional sessions, please visit sccmh.org under the Events tab and Recovery Summit. Individuals requesting professional credits, you will receive your certificate of accumulated credits by October 30th via email. As a reminder, please complete the short survey at the conclusion of the webinar. Thank you to our presenter, Elijah. Again, your time and information is appreciated.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for having me. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day.